In my previous video, I examined 10 common objections to the Kalam cosmological argument for God's existence. I showed that none of them successfully refute it. However, some of you may have noticed that I didn't address a very widespread and influential objection, namely, who created God? Although I, along with every professional philosopher, including atheists, consider this to be a terrible objection to God's existence, I'm dedicating a whole video to it because it comes up quite often. This is answering who created God. Richard Dawkins is arguably the best-known atheist of our time. In his best-selling book, The God Delusion, Dawkins uses this objection as his primary reason for rejecting the cosmological argument. The logic runs something like this. If everything needs a cause, then so does God. This is supposed to put the theist in an inescapable predicament. The atheist says, theists maintain that everything that exists has a cause. Since the universe exists, it must have had a cause, and the cause is God. The obvious problem is that if everything needs a cause, then God must need one as well. So if God created the universe, then who or what created God? This badly misrepresents the first premise of the Kalam cosmological argument, which specifically says everything that begins to exist has a cause. No intelligent theist has ever claimed that everything requires a cause. Traditionally, atheists held that the universe was the ultimate uncaused reality, while theists maintained that God was the creator of the universe. It was not until the evidence started decidedly favoring the idea of a cosmic beginning that atheists started saying things like, who created God? But then we must ask, if the idea of a past eternal universe was coherent, why challenge the idea of a past eternal God? Theism has always understood God to be eternal. God is believed to be from everlasting to everlasting. Why should atheists object to theists believing in an eternal God, since they traditionally believed in an eternal universe? Norman Geisler says, if the universe is not eternal, it needs a cause. On the other hand, if it has no beginning, it does not need a cause of its beginning. Likewise, if a God exists who has no beginning, it is absurd to ask who made God. It is a category mistake to ask who made the unmade or who created the uncreated. One may as well ask, where's the bachelor's wife? Furthermore, asking who created God is not strictly speaking an objection, it's just a question. Cameron Bertuzzi notes, questions aren't arguments. We may not know who created God, or if he was created at all, and this won't even touch the Kalam argument. William Lane Craig says, in order to recognize an explanation as the best, you don't need to have an explanation of the explanation. Imagine detectives coming upon a murder scene. One detective says, I wonder who murdered this victim. Another answers, we can't say there was a murderer. Where did the murderer come from? This is clearly ridiculous. Thus, we don't have to explain the origin of a cause to know there was a cause. This objection also assumes something impossible. It assumes everything must have a cause, but to say everything must have a cause is absurd. If everything must have a cause, then there would have to be an infinite regress of causes to explain the universe. But if causes go on infinitely, then we never could have gotten around to the present. Such a suggestion would require an actual infinity of causes and effects. Yet, as we've seen in a previous video, actual infinities are impossible, so something necessary must exist to terminate this infinite regress. The debate between theists and atheists is about ultimate reality. We all mostly agree that some things owe their existence to other things. Some entities have a cause. The question is, what is the best explanation for the first cause? What is ultimate? The two rivals have traditionally been God and the physical world. The remarkable thing is that philosophy, combined with new advances in cosmology, are making it nearly impossible to maintain that the physical world is the first cause and the ultimate reality. J. Richards summarizes this well.
The question is, who created God? Then you're pushed back to the fundamental metaphysical question of what is the fundamental reality. Every worldview is going to have an answer to the question, what's the fundamental reality? That is, what is the thing from which everything else derives? What is the thing that itself doesn't need a cause for its existence? Well, one of the most basic principles in asking these sorts of questions is that whatever the fundamental reality is, it has to be something that's always existed. It can't be something that's mutable, that is, that changes, that decays, or something that we know hasn't always existed. What's interesting about the evidence from the 20th century is that science itself has allowed us to rule out one of the primary candidates for ultimate explanation, the material universe. The best evidence now suggests that the material universe came into existence in the finite past. What that means is that the material universe is now a crummy candidate for ultimate explanation. The theist has always claimed that God is a being who has always existed. He exists necessarily, without cause. Now, the claim isn't that he began to exist uncaused out of nothing. The claim is that he has always existed. Well, there's nothing inconsistent with that claim. So if you're asking the question, what's the best candidate for ultimate existence, God or the material universe? Clearly, God is the best answer, the best alternative to that question. So the answer to the question, who created God, would be no one. God is that fundamental reality which has always existed and which himself does not have a cause.
So to conclude, the answer to who created God is no one did. Something eternal and necessary must exist, which is the cause of all things that are not necessary and contingent. Theists argue that this ultimate explanation is God, and this has been and continues to be confirmed by all of the evidence.